Hello, and a very warm welcome to the English Story Nook. We are so glad you are here with us today. Today, we're diving into a story about a woman who feels restless in her comfortable life. Get ready to discover what happens when a chance encounter makes her question her future and her own heart. It is a story about the difficult choices we all might face. Before we dive in, if you enjoy our stories and want to support what we do, please give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and consider buying us a coffee on Ko-fi. There's a link in the description below. Every like, subscription, and small contribution helps us keep creating great content for English learners like you. Let's get started! Can two hearts bear one secret? Paula Dragan traced the rim of her coffee cup, the porcelain cool against her fingertips. Across the table, Mirko Mittermeier was enthusiastically detailing the financial viability of a mortgage for a flat they had viewed over the weekend. He was steady, reliable, and their 5 years together had been a comfortable journey towards a predictable, shared future. Yet, lately, a subtle restlessness had taken root in her heart. She felt as if she were watching her life unfold from a distance, a well-rehearsed play in which she knew all the lines, but had forgotten the motivation. Had they become complacent, so sure of their path that they had stopped truly looking at each other? The inciting incident arrived, as they often do, disguised as a networking event. It was a launch party for a new tech incubator, hosted by a company named Lumaquenta Innovations. The room was a sea of ambitious faces and polite chatter, and then she saw him. Kemal Frontellini, a charismatic architect she had collaborated with on a project years ago. Their conversation started with professional pleasantries but quickly deepened, their words weaving a connection that felt both new and ancient. He spoke of feeling at a crossroads in his career, a sentiment that resonated so deeply with Paola's unspoken anxieties that it left her breathless. When he suggested they meet for coffee to continue their discussion, she agreed without hesitation, a silent acknowledgement that a boundary had just become ambiguous. Their coffee meeting felt less like a professional catch-up and more like a confession. The air between them was charged with unspoken possibilities. Kemal didn't just listen, he understood. He saw the flicker of doubt in her eyes that Mirko, in his loving comfort, had missed. "It feels like I'm standing on a precipice," she admitted, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "And I don't know whether to step back or jump." Kemal's gaze was intense. "Sometimes, the jump is the only way to know if you can fly," he replied softly. The conversation was a dangerous indulgence, and as Paola walked home, a wave of guilt washed over her, followed by an exhilarating, terrifying thrill. The situation began to escalate from that moment on. The text started innocently enough. An article he thought she'd find interesting, a photo of a building with a witty comment. But soon, their digital conversations became the most authentic part of her day. They were a lifeline to a version of herself she thought she had lost. The emotional affair began to escalate quickly, becoming a secret garden she tended to with furtive taps on her phone screen. Mirko, oblivious but not insensitive, noticed her shifting moods. "You seem distant," he said one evening, his brow furrowed with concern. "Is everything all right?" His kindness was a dagger to her conscience. The lie she was living felt heavier with each passing day, its ramifications stretching into every corner of her life with him. The midpoint arrived during a late-night call with Kemal. He was describing a trip he dreamt of taking, painting a vivid picture of ancient ruins and sun-drenched coastlines. "I wish you were here to see it with me," he'd said, his voice low and intimate. The words hung in the air, a fragile, beautiful, and devastating admission. In that moment, Paula knew she was inextricably tangled in something far more complicated than a fleeting crush. Her relationship with Mirko, once a solid foundation, now felt like it was built on sand. She began to seriously question the long-term viability of a partnership where she felt so emotionally disconnected. Mirko's concern grew into a quiet suspicion. He didn't snoop, but his questions became more pointed, his gaze more searching. The subtle shift in his behavior made Paola feel like a cornered animal. The pressure mounted when Kemal, during a walk through the park, gently forced the issue. "I can't keep living in this in-between space, Paola," he said, his eyes pleading. "What we have, it feels real, more real than anything I've felt in a long time. But it's also ephemeral, and I need to know if it has a future." He was asking her to choose, to step off the precipice she had described. He was asking for a commitment she wasn't sure she could give, not while her life was so inextricably linked with Mirko's. The crisis came on a rainy Tuesday. Paola sat in her car after work, the rhythmic drumming of water on the roof mirroring the frantic beat of her heart. She couldn't walk into her apartment and pretend anymore. The double life had hollowed her out, leaving her a ghost in her own home. She knew what she had to do. The conversation with Mirko was the hardest of her life. She started by confessing her distance, her unhappiness, the feeling of being at a crossroads. At first, he was understanding, suggesting therapy, a holiday, anything to fix what was broken. But she knew it was beyond repair. With a deep, shuddering breath, she told him about Kemal. The revelation shattered the calm. Mirko's face, usually so open and kind, contorted with a pain that was visceral. The argument that followed wasn't loud or violent, but it was brutal in its honesty. Accusations were met with tearful confessions, questions with painful truths. "How could you?" he asked, his voice cracking. "After everything we built?" It was in laying her own brokenness bare that Paola found a strange, painful clarity. "It wasn't about him," she tried to explain, the words feeling inadequate. "It was about me. I wasn't being authentic to myself, or to you." The conversation was agonizing, but in a way, it was also cathartic. The truth, in all its ugliness, was finally out. They were no longer living a lie. The potential ramifications of her choice were immense, but the deceit had been a heavier burden. The breakup was a slow, painful amputation. Dividing possessions, telling friends, untangling their lives. Each step was a fresh wave of grief. Paola met Camille a week later. The victory she thought she might feel was absent, replaced by a profound sense of loss and exhaustion. "I need time," she told him, the words tasting like ash. "Time to figure out who I am on my own." He was disappointed but understood. Their connection, born in a moment of shared vulnerability, might have been too ephemeral to survive the wreckage of her old life. Or perhaps it was just the beginning of a different, more honest story. For now, she was alone, standing in the rubble of the life she had dismantled. It was a terrifying and lonely place to be. But for the first time in a long time, it felt real. It felt authentic. She had become too complacent in her previous life, and now, she was ready to face the consequences and build something new, something true. The meaning of her connection with Kemal remained ambiguous, a question mark hanging over a future she would have to write for herself. That's the end of our story for today. It really makes you think about the difficult choices we sometimes face in life. What do you think is more important? A comfortable, predictable life, or taking a risk to find your true self? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to check the description for some helpful materials to practice what you've learned. Thank you for joining us at the English Story Nook. We hope you feel inspired to continue your learning journey. Until next time, happy learning and goodbye.